Today on Locked On Canadiens, we shouldn't have to talk everybody off a ledge on the day that Ivan Demidov is making his debut.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. We want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day. My name is Laura Sab, also known as The Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. And Ian, the Canadiens have failed to clinch a playoff spot, and hearing the fan base talk, you would think that it is time to jump off a cliff. And I just want everybody to calm down. Everything is going to be fine. I want everyone to remember where they were on American Thanksgiving and looking at the standings on American Thanksgiving, that arbitrary point in the calendar where people say if there's a team that's not in the playoff spot or the playoff picture by this time, they're not going to make it. And the Canadiens are a point away, right? The tragic number for Columbus is a point. They have absolutely zero margin for error. All the Canadiens need to do is get to overtime in one of their next two games. And guess what? I think they're going to win one of those two games.
Yeah, I will say it's the point system makes this stupid. You are right. The tragic number for Columbus remains 1. If they lose a point at any point between now and the end of the season, it's over. However, if it's based on points the Canadiens need, a point will not do it. They will need 2 points. So they need to win, but it doesn't matter how they win, because they won't be able to catch them. If it's still so stupid. Just win has been my mantra for weeks now, and that's all that really matters right now is just win. We're just trying to win one game. We'll get more into that as we, get deeper into this show, but awful lot of panic in the air. Yeah. Especially on a weekend where the Canadiens actually made their path to the playoffs easier. And I understand why people are upset, but they did, right? They went from having to win in regulation on Saturday to clinch, and now it's any kind of win or any point lost by Columbus the rest of the way. So it is easier for them, but they still have to do it. They have to go out there and execute.
And we are going to talk a bit about that in our final segment where we do our Habs weekly forecast. As you know, only 2 games this week. We will dissect and discuss the magic number and all of that. Don't forget our trivia is coming up. In our middle segment, we will be talking about a weekly recap. We'll talk about the week that was. But now, in our first segment, I want to focus the rest of this segment on Ivan Demidov, because today is his debut. The Montreal Canadiens are welcoming the Chicago Blackhawks, the second worst team in the league. And they need to win, obviously. We want them to win a game. But Ivan Demidov is making his debut at home. This is a big deal. We are very hype. We are extremely excited. So what can we expect, Ian? I think, they have to ease him into the lineup. They can't just throw him to the wolves.
Yeah, I get that. At the same time, though,
why not?
He's joining, right? Why not? He's joining at a time that is the Canadiens' offense is dried up. Just over the last few games, I mean, they've been very fortunate, especially like against Detroit, where they scored 4, but weren't 2 of those were into an empty net, right? Like that's a little bit of a paper tiger there. But they only had 2 against Ottawa, didn't score against Toronto. They're getting a player who offense is the name of his game. Creativity and creating scoring opportunities is who this guy is. I understand they'll have to ease him in, but I wonder how long it takes before Marty's competitive juices start flowing a little bit more into overdrive, and we're seeing him on power play 1. We're seeing him take shifts with Suzuki and Caulfield, or Suzuki and Slafkovsky, and maybe Caulfield is on another line. I wonder how long it is if he steps in and he doesn't look out of place and he looks like he can be that same kind of dominant forward. Again, I'm not saying that he's going to step in and do that immediately, but if he does, because what if I do it anyway? If he does that, how long can the Canadiens keep a lid on that? Because we have a history of them doing that this year. It was Lane Hudson, right? They tried to keep a lid on the Lane Hudson hype as long as they could, and then they found out that it was actively hurting the team to do that. Instead of just taking the leash off that kid and just letting him go, they were trying to, shelter him and put him in positions to succeed. And then you find out that Lane Hudson's going to succeed in many situations. Now they have a much shorter sort of runway for this, especially given that they need to start picking up points if they want to make the playoffs. With the power play being as bad as it is, I kind of wonder if he's not on power play 1 as soon as Monday night at some point. Like if they have one listless looking power play,
That's it.
second time it's like, hey, so one of you guys is gone. We have to put Demidov out there. I just wonder how long they can keep a lid on this if Demidov shows up and is as advertised immediately, because of how important these next 2 games, these next 4 points that are available for the Canadiens, knowing how important they are, might force Marty's hand. So I'm really curious to see how this unfolds. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how he handles that moment at the Bell Center, but if he scores, they're going to have to build Bell Center 2, and I'm not talking about the one in Ottawa. Like I'm talking they have to build a new building.
Or just repair the roof. I don't know that they have time.
At the end of it, it would be over. It would be a condemned building.
All right. So here's a question, because I know we do the what we want, what Marty wants, what Marty actually does.
Yeah, great point.
Where in your lineup, when the Canadiens announce the lineup for tonight, where do you see them putting Demidov?
I think he's next to Newhook in line A. I just don't think that there's too much of a reason to do anything else, right? This lets you take Pezzetta out of the lineup and put Kapanen on the 4th line potentially, or if Emil Heineman's ready to go, he can go back and you can recreate that 4th line. Or if Heineman's ready to go and you want to put Kapanen on that 4th line, maybe you can give Yoel Armia a night off because that guy's banged up right now.
Yeah.
Can you do those things? You shouldn't touch the Anderson, Gallagher, Dvorak line. I thought against Toronto and Ottawa, they were Montreal's best line.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for right now, there's a big emphasis on for right now. The Boy Genius line probably stays together. Yeah. But if they continue to struggle to generate offense as they have, Marty's going to have to do something. And I don't know that involves Demidov going onto that line, but it's going to be something. Like he's not just going to sit back and watch that line not
produce.
Yeah, and just be like, well, that's my line. I got to roll with it. No, I think he's going to, again, like the competitive juices are going to start to flow. Yes, they were, they won 6 straight. They've lost the last 2. They have points in 7 of their last 8, but many of those last couple in the 6-game winning streak, yeesh, like they were rough. And instead of, being in a position where they're already safely in a playoff spot, they have to win a very high intensity game on Monday night at the Bell Center. And I'll get into some numbers on that in a little bit because I am less worried about that game than I think a lot of other people are. But I just think that Demidov is going to be a shot in the arm for this team. I think they're all really stoked to see him play. I think the Bell Center is going to erupt when he touches the puck for the first time, let alone if he gets on the board in some capacity. I think they'll be ready to go on Monday against Chicago.
I'm excited. And we will get into those numbers a little bit later in this show, in this episode. But okay, so one thing that I think is, for me, the most important thing is, yes, there should be an adjustment period. Yes, it's like the kids making the NHL, and yes, there's growing pains in the NHL. But there are a few players I see with the kind of confidence that he has.
Yeah.
Like it's an effortless confidence, right? Because the talent is there, it's undeniable, and every talented player has growing pains. I think that's the biggest thing. It's just, for me, I feel like he doesn't seem to me like the kind of guy that would get owned by the moment, but rather he would own the moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that administration, the Kent Hughes, Jeff Gorton, Nick Bobroff drafting machine, that's who they're looking for. They're looking for players of elite skill and of, unique physical attributes like Slafkovsky, but they're looking for guys who, when the moment shows up, they don't shy away. Like Slafkovsky, although I will say he's struggled a little bit as of late. But Demidov is a guy who they are looking at as somebody who is going to thrive under that spotlight and not wilt under it, which is sort of, funny enough what the rest of the team is doing. They're kind of all wilting in this moment, as we've seen over the course of the season. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit later too, but I think you're totally right. Like, he's built for this moment. He's built for, hopefully, if they're in the playoffs by the end of the week, he's built for those. Like, it's going to be exciting to see that they get there. I'm very excited for Monday night. I know everyone's nervous. Everyone's, watching the Columbus Blue Jackets come screaming back. But I'm very excited because I think Monday is going to tell us not only a lot about Demidov, but about this hockey team.
And speaking of Monday night, we will be having our forecast a little bit later. But first, we got to do a recap of the week that was. And I promise you, it is not all doom and gloom. It's actually, there's a lot of bright spots to it. So let's get into that in just one moment. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day with multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's upwork.com. Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. All right, let's talk about the week that was. The Montreal Canadiens had a little bit of an off schedule, not a completely off schedule. They had a game against Detroit on Tuesday night, and then they had back-to-back Battle of Ontario, I'm going to call it, just because I have that on my mind. They went to Ottawa, and then they went to Toronto, and they came back without clinching a playoff spot. And honestly, it's not as bad as it feels. Like, I'm going to go right out and say that first period against Detroit was inexcusable. That first period against Ottawa was also inexcusable. But after that, I feel like the Canadiens come back against Detroit, and the way the Canadiens played in that game against Toronto, especially contextualizing them in terms of quality of competition, I felt that the Montreal Canadiens did fine. It's just that playoff spot is just within reach, and the Canadiens failed to grab it. I think that's what's like making people think that the week was a wash or a waste. But first of all, they put distance between themselves and Detroit, which was so crucial. But also, the Canadiens had won 7 games in a row. Like, that is... They're not going to win 9 games. This Canadian team is not going to win 9 games in a row. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't just going to win every game. Their losses were bound to come. It's just unfortunate that one of them came against the Senators in the fashion that it did.
Yeah. I think so. I spent Sunday, as I imagine a lot of people did, watching the Masters. It was the final day of the Masters, and watching Rory McIlroy, who has 11 times now, this was his 11th attempt to win the Masters and to complete the Grand Slam. We had seen him get really close and just completely crash out on the final day, and he finally did it on Sunday. And I just kept watching it, thinking of how, like, the Canadiens this season have kind of done that, where they look like they turned a corner and then they immediately fall on their face. And we keep thinking, yes, they're making progress. Now they just have to do the one thing, and then they don't do that thing. That's sort of where we're at right now. And I think that's why, the game against Ottawa was so frustrating, because that's a team that you could have swept. It's not a team that you struggled against this year. It's a team that you kind of fed their lunch all year. A team in Ottawa who is a playoff team, a good one at that, but they were missing Brady Tkachuk again. Their heart and soul leader was not there. And you still got outplayed early, and the game was over very quickly. It was, Montreal was out of that game fast. I look at the Toronto game, and I think they played a great road first period and second period especially, everyone's going to look at the shots on goal and be like, oh, that game wasn't even close. But like the shot attempts favored Montreal for most of that game. It's just they weren't getting them on net. They were missing the net. Toronto blocks a ton of shots. I found that game to be frustrating, but it's, a game where the Canadiens don't even score a goal. They get a point in the standings, right? Like it's easy for us to get swept up in they needed a regulation win. Otherwise they wouldn't clinch. Well, if they had won that in overtime, would you feel any better? Because they wouldn't have clinched on Saturday. Yes, they'd be closer. The margin for error for Columbus would still be that 1 point. In fact, I think at that point they would need to win. They would need to win in other fashions. I don't know that just getting the any points would get them in. But the one thing I do want to talk about with respect to this last week is that the goaltending stepped up in a big way. I'll start back in Nashville with Dobish. So it's 2 starts for each goalie. Dobish at Nashville, 36 for 37. Montembeault versus Detroit, 34 for 35. Montembeault at Ottawa, 28 for 32. So a little bit different, but I think some of those, the Canadiens just left him out to dry a lot of times. And then Dobish at Toronto, 34 for 35. So 949 from from the Canadiens goalies this week. Like, that was something we were worried about this time last week, was the goaltending. And that has solved itself. But in this sort of whack-a-mole fashion that a team like the Canadiens is, we solve one problem and then another one springs up. The other one being the offense. The offense can't do much of anything right now. I will say, like, Lane Hutson's been sitting on 64 points for a few games now. It's been a while since we've seen any sort of offense out of him, not from lack of trying. He still looks fantastic, but it's been difficult for him to get anything going. I just find a week like this, the Canadiens, they pick up, what was it? 2, 4, 5 out of 8 points. They went over 500 this week and we're all still upset. I think people are less concerned about the Canadiens and more concerned about the Blue Jackets. I think that's where a lot of this is, because the Blue Jackets are winning a lot. The Blue Jackets, at the end of this, though, they will have needed to have won 6 straight games to get in. I think they're currently at 4. So that's their margin for error. They have won 6 games in a row at 1 point this season, but that they need to do it again to get in. That's what's on the line for them. They're playing a little bit more carefree than Montreal is right now. But I have a harder time getting too upset about this week. And we'll talk about the week to come, because I think that's the linchpin in all of this, is figuring out how they can, just put all the noise aside, shut everybody up, and just go out there and pick up 2 points and punch your ticket to the playoffs for the first time in 4 years. You're muted.
I think the other thing about the Columbus story is that team feels like a team of destiny right now.
Yeah.
And the Montreal Canadiens doesn't anymore, right? The Montreal Canadiens are just outperforming expectations. The Columbus Blue Jackets are performing miracles. So I think that's why people are nervous, and rightfully so. And the thing is, if it's not going to be the Montreal Canadiens, what better team to root for to make the playoffs instead of them? The Columbus Blue Jackets, right? 100%. Like, that's something I can get behind. If it was going to be the Rangers, I would have been mightily upset, right?
The Detroit Red Wings, this year's Detroit Red Wings.
And this is the point that Ian and I both made earlier before we started recording, is if the Canadiens cannot beat the Chicago Blackhawks tomorrow with that injection of Ivan Demidov, with all the lessons they learned over the last week, like, they don't deserve to be in the playoffs to begin with. So I do think, yes, like, the concerns about Columbus are valid. I think they're extremely valid. I think that the Montreal Canadiens just simply are the better team on ice, right? And we can't forget that. So 2 things. We are running out of time in this segment. I think the one takeaway that I would take from this week is the power play really can't be this abysmal. Yep. But I did appreciate that the Canadiens appear to have learned their lesson about bad starts. I liked their start against Toronto. Again, you have to consider the quality of competition when you're talking Montreal Canadiens versus Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, you're talking about a team that I believe is on the verge of clinching the division if they haven't already. I think for me. Like Toronto is one of the scarier teams, especially in the regular season. Like it remains to be seen what happens in the playoffs this year. I just felt that they did a better job. They played a lot tighter. They did show up earlier, and that's what I'm expecting against Chicago. Because if they can't do that again, they don't deserve to make the playoffs. So the start, it's a good thing. The playoff, they got to the power play, they got to fix it. All right, we're going to get into our forecast. It is the final week of the regular season, and the big question is: are the Montreal Canadiens going to make the playoffs? Let's talk about that in just a moment. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or I just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go to. If you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, or to even a little play with them and make little towers and stuff, the in shell options are a classic favorite. They're so delicious. They're easy to grab and go. They have wonderful flavors, and they have all 9 essential amino acids. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, it is Monday. It is time to do the weekly forecast. I'm actually wondering, Ian, what do we do if the Canadiens make the playoffs? It's going to be very disjointed weekly forecast for us. Do we just do playoff previews? Is that what we're going to do?
I guess so. I mean, it's a good problem to have, right? It's a problem I would prefer than coming in here Tuesday morning and trying to figure out how we're going to beat the Carolina Hurricanes. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We're taking this one day at a time, as I imagine the Canadiens are. Look, I mean, there's 2 games this week, just 2, maybe more if they make the playoffs, but those games have yet to be determined. We joke that every game is the biggest game since the last one, and that's still true, and it will be true until the Canadiens pick up 2 points. That's what's keeping them out, is not being able to just put that final nail in the coffin. Their first attempt, as we've said and as many people have already, is Monday night against the Chicago Blackhawks. The Canadiens lost earlier to the Blackhawks this season 4-2. That was back in January, which on its own, saying that is kind of funny. Or I would imagine it worries a lot of people, like, oh, they're going to drop this one too. That Chicago loss was sandwiched in the middle of that road trip where the Canadiens beat the last 4 Stanley Cup champions. And we joked that the funniest outcome would be they beat every other team and lose to Chicago. And that's what happened. Montreal has won the last, I believe, 2 games at the Bell Center against the Chicago Blackhawks. The last one was actually the game that we lost Kirby Dach for the season. That was a 3-2 victory back on October 14th, 2023. Before that, a 4-0 shutout win on February 14th, 2023 against the Blackhawks. Do you remember when the last time the Canadiens lost at home was, Laura?
I'm going to be really honest. I don't remember.
The last loss in any situation was the Colorado Avalanche at home. It was that when they came back and they lost in a shootout. They haven't lost in regulation at home since the game before the Four Nations break. That was February 9th against the Tampa Bay Lightning. That was the last regulation home loss. Last game where the Canadiens took no points from a home game. They're 9-0-1 in their last 10 home games. Their only loss is that Colorado loss. They are feeding off of the Bell Center right now. I think that is going to be a factor on Monday night, especially if they can get in early, start the game on time, which, it's funny. Against Toronto, I thought their start was actually okay.
Yeah, it was good.
They didn't give Toronto much. I think they generated maybe a couple looks early, but they didn't get the doors blown off seconds into the game, right? They played a road period and they hung in there with a team who's trying to win the division. When it comes to the rest of the starts for the rest of the year, they're both home games. The one on Monday against Chicago, and then later on in the week against Carolina. Chicago's going to try to play spoiler. They are the second worst team in the National Hockey League. And I was saying this before the show started. If you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, which I am, which Laura is, which you are, you're hoping they make the playoffs, which is the right thing to do. But if you can't beat the second worst team in the National Hockey League, I'm not sure I want to watch you in the playoffs. I'm not sure that I can trust you to not go out on a national stage and throw up all over yourselves, like Marty would say. Like that's what's really at stake for me in this game is my belief in this team as it's constructed. If they cannot win against the second worst team in the league when they have an opportunity to punch their ticket to the Stanley Cup playoffs, the whole thing gets thrown up for me. And that's why, like, I know a lot of people are nervous right now, and I will be nervous after the Chicago game if they do not win. But until then, they're playing the second worst team in the league, and they absolutely have to take care of business. And if they don't, this is going to be a very dour conversation on Tuesday morning about what we do against whoever is coming to town with the Carolina Hurricanes. Who knows what kind of team they're sending? You know, they're locked into their spot. Who knows if it's going to be, if we're playing, I think it's still the Charlotte Checkers, their AHL team. Are we playing the Charlotte Checkers later on this week? Are you putting that much importance on this game? I know that it is important, obviously, like they need to win these points, but like, where are you at on Monday's game against Chicago?
I think it's the biggest game. And not to, like, you know, the same thing that you were saying, like we say this about every game. I think this is it. I think, you know, Friday night's game was like the biggest game, but there's still room. And then Saturday night's game was the biggest game, but there's still room. And then like the Monday game it's the biggest game. There's no room because, again, we don't know what kind of team Carolina is sending, but I think also the emotional deflation of not winning against Chicago, especially with Ivan Demidov, especially at the Bell Center, especially all of that stuff. I think the Canadiens themselves might lose faith if they don't win tomorrow night.
Yeah, I agree.
Or tonight. Sorry, by the time you're listening to this.
As you're listening to this tonight. I completely agree with you that, like, if they cannot come away with 2 points against Chicago, the air is going to come out of the balloon. And then we're not only hoping the Canadiens can beat the Carolina Hurricanes, who, like I mentioned, we don't know what kind of team they'll send to Montreal for that game. I would imagine it'd be smart for them to rest a bunch of guys, but try to tell Rod Brindamore to take it easy about anything. That guy looks like he looks like he's always about to explode. There's no chance that he's ever going to just be like, nah, it's fine, everybody take the night off. Like, he's going to coach to win that game. And then it just becomes, we have to watch and see if anybody can beat the Columbus Blue Jackets. They play a game in Philadelphia, and then their last game is a home game against the New York Islanders. Two teams that are out of it with nothing else to play for other than trying to spoil the Columbus Blue Jackets season. You know, we thought that maybe the Washington Capitals, who, if Montreal is to make it, they will be playing in the first round, could have helped us out this weekend. But the Blue Jackets sweep the Capitals in both of those games. My theory, the Capitals are afraid of the Montreal Canadiens, and they don't want to play them in the first round. So they're throwing these games, making this Jet Greaves kid look incredible, who, by the way, he does look incredible. He looked really good in both those games against the Caps. Look, I'm not going to go as far as to say, like, the rebuild hinges on Monday. That's not true. Like, the Canadiens, if they make the playoffs, it's gravy, right? We didn't expect them to be here. And I know that doesn't help to hear, but it doesn't change much about, like, my vision of how this team is going to succeed in the future. But
it's true.
you'd feel a lot better about their ability to, you know, just bear down and get 2 points if they can find a way to do it on Monday.
Yes. And I think that's the biggest thing too, is that, you know, before the season started, we answered a mailbag question and we got a lot of flack for it because we said that, you know, we wanted a higher draft pick versus the playoff experience. But I thought about it and I was like, even if they get swept in 4 games against the Carolina Hurricanes, that playoff experience is going to be incredible.
And
did I say the Carolina Hurricanes?
It's fine.
I meant the Washington Capitals.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
And to defend our past selves, we did not say there was no value in going to the playoffs. We just thought there'd be more value in getting that high pick. Obviously, though, they're in this spot. They've played themselves into this position. We're thrilled about it. We wish that they were a little bit better at putting this thing behind them. But look, as far as I see it, like the Columbus Blue Jackets need to be perfect, and the Canadiens have 2 more opportunities to put this thing away.
Yeah.
And until they are out of those opportunities, and until the Blue Jackets still have a pulse, I'm going to say the Canadiens have the edge. But that can go away very quickly. I imagine if Montreal loses against Chicago and Columbus wins their next game, I would imagine the odds go pretty close to 50-50 for that spot. So it's going to come down to it. They're going to need to just pick up some points on Monday and put an end to this.
Yeah, they absolutely need to put an end to this on Monday. And hopefully that's the conversation we'll have tomorrow. But it's time for a trivia before we end the show.
Yeah. All right. Yesterday, the question over the weekend was a bit of a troll question. Maybe that's why we got shut out by the Toronto Maple Leafs on Saturday. So I'll wear some of that. In honor of Saturday's game in Toronto, we have a Leafs history question. Which goalie leads the Toronto Maple Leafs in all-time wins by a goalie the Leafs drafted? Laura, I'll give you the honors on this one. Who is that goalie?
It is one Tuukka Rask.
Yes, Tuukka Rask. Very importantly, never played a game for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He was traded for Andrew Raycroft back in the day and won a Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins. I believe he was their backup goalie at that time, and then took them to 2 more Cup finals, and still, wasn't able to get it done, but still the one of, if not the greatest goalies in Bruins history, and definitely still among the best goalies that the Toronto Maple Leafs have ever drafted. All right, our winners on that one: user Super F, Arbold, Amy P, Super Rain, who's Randy? Sorry, I can't read my own handwriting. Francis Tardif, Zach Young, and our pal Good Sport. So lots of people knew the answer to that one. Thanks for playing along. All right, we're talking about clinching. The last time the Montreal Canadiens clinched a playoff spot was May 10th, 2021, a 4-3 overtime loss to the Edmonton Oilers. The loser point got them in. One line had all 3 of the Habs goals that night. Which line was that? Name the 3 players who had the Habs goals in that one. I don't know if this is another hint, but they had a 4th. That same line had a 4th goal that was called back on an offsides challenge. So they had all of the offense, and including some of the offense that didn't even count. So if you have the answer, put it in the comments. Let us know. Also, our contest, keep putting contest entry down in the chat. When we get to 4,500 subscribers, we're doing a drawing for a signed picture of Josh Anderson. And at 5,000, a signed photo of Arbor Xhekaj. So good luck. Keep subscribing. Make sure you subscribe. That's the only way you can be entered for this contest.
And tell all your friends to subscribe as well.
Yeah, the faster we get to that number, the faster we do the drawing.
Yes, you want these. All right, that's it for today's episode. And make sure, obviously, you tune in to our next episode where we will be recapping what is hopefully a clinching game against the Chicago Blackhawks and Ivan Demidov's debut. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Subscribe, tell your friends, leave reviews, let people find us, tell everyone about us. If the Canadiens make the playoffs, it's going to be a really fun time. You can find us all over social media as well. We are Locked On Canadiens on TikTok, on Instagram, on Blue Sky, and on Gmail. Send us questions, send us all kinds of observations. We love getting mail from all of you. Thank you so. You can find us on Blue Sky as well. I'm at The Active Stick. Ian is at Maybe It's Ian. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you tomorrow, hopefully celebrating.